Thank you, family, friends, and colleagues for joining us. Thank you for all of your countless years of support and for making today even possible. A very special thank you to my family, especially to my mother, my sister, and my best friend sitting out there. I know that my father and my grandparents would be so very proud if they were here with us today. Many of the people who are sitting behind me are the reasons I am still here. This is the moment where we pause to celebrate all of the PhD graduates and all that it took to get us here. For many of us, this has been one of the most difficult journeys. The intellectual and emotional labor that was required to get here included navigating through a series of challenges that existed beyond the demands of our educations, but were also sometimes a direct result of our experiences with this institution. A few weeks ago, I was walking around People's Park to get myself ready for today's speech, and I ran into someone I hadn't seen in many years, my high school guidance counselor. When I filled him in on my life since he last saw me, telling him that I would be graduating from a PhD program and would be giving his commencement speech, he seemed genuinely stunned. After a pause, he said, "I can still remember when we were trying to make sure you finished high school." It has been quite a journey, hasn't it? I think we both left the conversation with tears in our eyes. I'm grateful for that encounter because it allowed me to invite him here today. And it provided a timely reminder of how far I have come. There are a few of us here today who were groomed for the academy, who knew exactly what it took to get here and what it would take to finish. But there are many of us for whom every step through this process has felt impossible. Aside from the demanding workloads and milestones of a PhD program, we balanced complicated personal lives, taking care of our parents, our siblings, our children, and navigating through various kinds of losses, while trying to tend to our own mental, emotional, and physical needs. A number of us are not only the first PhDs in our families, we were also the first to graduate college, and a handful of us are the first in our families to graduate high school. Among us are first-generation immigrants, survivors of different forms of violence, those who lost friends and family prematurely, and those who come from neighborhoods that are more often the objects of our peers' study, rather than the places from which they come. I can still remember when I first got the letter of acceptance to the GSC. I crouched on the floor, opened up the envelope, and whispered quietly to my friend, "What if they got the wrong Connie Wun?" Fortunately, he reassured me that if they had gotten the wrong Connie Wun, it was too late for them to take it back now. Nevertheless, I've been looking over my shoulder ever since. When you spend a lifetime as a member of marginalized communities, a sense of belonging is not naturally part of your arsenal. In fact, it is constantly undermined. This entitlement to an education, to a voice, to an experience of developing expertise has to be planted, nurtured, developed, and validated at every step along the way. This will be our task as educators, but it will also be our ongoing duty to ourselves and to each other. My journey as a former high school teacher and through this program has meant grappling with the ironies of working within and for an educational system that has caused so much damage to our communities. For years, I have worked with students of color, particularly girls, who have not only had to overcome the effects of poverty, sexism, racism, and homophobia outside of school, they've had to traverse a school system that failed to meet their needs and reinforced these forms of violence in their lives. While many of these girls may have met our metrics for success by going off to college, most are still haunted by the structures that continuously undermine them. Even as we celebrate our achievements today, young students of color, particularly Black children, starting in preschool, are being suspended, expelled, and arrested. Their behaviors are characterized as forms of disobedience, and legions of them are now have been removed from school, punished, and neglected. Many are being funneled into the prison system as a result of these practices. And while studies have identified this as the school-to-prison pipeline, my research shows that schools are themselves sites of imprisonment. They are equipped with surveillance cameras, guards, police officers, and racialized logics of criminality that peg students as problems instead of the structures that confine them. Right here in our own backyard, lawsuits were recently filed against a couple of Bay Area school districts for racial discrimination and racial profiling through school discipline practices. And across the country, cities like Newark, New Orleans, Philadelphia, New York, and Chicago have closed hundreds of K-12 schools, especially in Black and Latino communities. In these neighborhoods, teachers and children are being shipped around under the pretense of educational reform. And teachers' unions are being scapegoated for systemic failures. At the same time, 60 years after the landmark decision in Brown v. Board of Education, our current system has proven to be even more segregated than it was in 1954. Meanwhile, both the public education system and the public at large have become explicitly privatized, with corporate interests dictating the needs of the most marginalized communities. And at the university level, the dangerous liaisons among the military, police, and higher education for the purposes of nation-state building could not be made any clearer than through the recent appointment of our new UC president, the former head of Homeland Security. These trends are some of the contours of our current public education system. They are indicative of this nation's history and also of its darker impulses. In this context, our duty as educators, researchers, and scholars will continue to be an extremely difficult one, particularly for those of us who offer strong critiques of the public education system and what it symbolizes. Some of our ideas have and will continue to be ignored, rendered too abstract, too unconventional, too big, and definitely too idealistic. Fortunately for us, despite these characterizations, and because of them, we refuse to concede our ideals. We have not and will not lose sight of the challenging personal, social, and political motivations that prompted us to enter the GSE. They are the same ones that propelled us to finish. And we endured because we had an obligation to the students in our communities, who we have taught and who have taught us. We owe them our PhD, and we also owe them a profound commitment to imagining and creating an entirely new educational system that does more than teach.
Yay, sister!
One that does more than teach science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Yes.
We owe them a system that centers their needs and counters the layers of violence that shape their lives. One that will equip them with appropriate resources to counteract, challenge, and destroy the nation's dark impulses. We owe our students a system that imbues them with belief, tenacity, and confidence to know that they are supposed to be here. We owe this to them and to ourselves.